Good morning, everyone. I hope you're having a terrific Thursday. We finished up Crenshaw Read Aloud yesterday, so we're going to be starting with Lincoln's Grave Robbers today. And there are a lot of different characters in this story, but I am going to read the back of the book so you can get an idea of what it will be about, and then I will jump right in. The Lincoln Monument was completed in 1874, and the president's coffin was moved inside. Lincoln's remains could finally rest in peace, or so everyone believed. On October 20th, 1875, Secret Service agents raid the Illinois workshop of master counterfeiter Benjamin Boyd and arrest him. Soon after Boyd is hauled off to prison, members of his counterfeiting ring gather and devise a plan to get Boyd back, steal Abraham Lincoln's body from its tomb, stash it in a secret location, and demand as ransom the release of Boyd and $200,000 in cash. The action in this true crime thriller alternates among the conspirators, the Secret Service agents on their trail, and the undercover double agent moving back and forth between the two groups, offering a glimpse into the inner workings of counterfeiting, grave robbing, detective work, and the early days of the Secret Service. All right, so let's jump right in. And this has a prologue, which is just like a glimpse into the beginning of the story. And our prologue is titled Midnight Escape. A passenger train rattled through the woods of western Pennsylvania late one summer night in 1864. In the rear car sat a man with a black beard. Iron shackles and chains bound his wrists and ankles. Armed guards sat on either side of him. The train was on its way to Washington, D.C. Pete McCartney was headed for the dreaded old Capitol prison, or so it appeared. The prisoner turned and looked through the open door at the rear of the car. Judging by the speed the train slid past moonlight clumps of trees, he figured they were doing 35 miles an hour, a bit fast for what he needed to do. He glanced at the guards, one seated beside him, another across the aisle. Each seemed lost in his own thoughts. McCartney sprang up. He stumbled and slid on short steps, chains clanking down the aisle and through the open door. The guards dashed onto the platform just in time to see the prisoner dive over the side and smack the gravel slope along the tracks and disappear into the darkness. One of the soldiers lunged for the alarm cord strung along the side of the car. The steam whistle on the roof let loose an ear-splitting blast, and the train began screeching to a stop. "What is it?" asked a startled passenger. "McCartney has escaped," yelled one of the guards. "And who is McCartney? How has he escaped?" "Gone out at the car door," the guard shouted. "When?" "Now, this moment." "While the train was in motion?" asked a stunned conductor. And a conductor is the person that drives the train. "Confound that fellow," grunted one of the guards as he jumped from the slowing train. "Well, he smashed every bone in his skin at all events," the other said as he jumped. They hurried back along the dark track, swinging lanterns, expecting to come quickly to the prisoner's mangled body, but there was no sign of him. And now McCartney is speaking. "I was hurt, of course," McCartney later said of his midnight leap, "but I fled to the woods, waited till all was quiet and the train had gone, struggled along for hours, skulked and secreted myself, and with a stone finally smashed the iron shackles from my limbs." McCartney was hungry, bruised as a rotting apple, and lost somewhere in the forest far from home. But he wasn't going to jail, and that's all that mattered. This was far from his first escape. Pete McCartney was a counterfeiter, a coney man, as government agents called him. He'd been arrested many times for making and passing fake money, but had always found ways to wriggle free. McCartney busted out of one prison by patiently collecting foil from the insides of tobacco packages, melting the metal with a candle, and molding it into a key to his jail cell. Usually, his method of escape was a lot simpler. He bought his way out. "I was always a cash man, you know," McCartney bragged. "I have paid away over $70,000 first and last in good money to escape the clutches of the law." He wasn't sure he could bribe his way out of the old Capitol prison, which explains the dangerous train escape. "I was aware there was risk in jumping from the cars when the train was flying along at such a rate," he explained. "But then we have to take risks as we meet with them." After such a close call on the train, McCartney tried to go straight. He drifted back to his native Midwest and opened a photography studio. Then he moved to another town and bought a livery stable. Knowing the police were after him, he couldn't stay in one place. "I practiced dentistry for a while," he said, But this was too slow for me. He even earned money as a traveling lecturer, giving talks on the art of detecting counterfeit currency. But the lure of easy money was too strong. He started counterfeiting again. I shoved a good many notes as I traveled, admitted McCartney. The officers got on my trail. He was arrested in Cincinnati, escaped, was recaptured in Illinois, and taken to jail in the state capital of Springfield. And then here's a photo of the prison. When the news reached Washington, D.C., an excited Herman Whitley hopped on a train and headed west, an ex-Union Army officer. Whitley was now chief of the United States Secret Service, a new government agency in charge of battling counterfeiters. He knew all about Pete McCartney and was eager to question him. Whitley's interview with the Coney man was a bit disappointing. McCartney offered to turn over his stash of bogus cash, but refused to squeal on other well-known counterfeiters. The chief got up to leave. "You won't leave me here, I suppose?" McCartney asked, seeming surprised. "Yes, for the present," said Whitley. "You're safe here." "Oh, I can get out of this place easy enough," McCartney said, grinning. "I have done so before, and I can do it again." "I guess not," Whitley said. "Where are you stopping, Colonel?" Whitley mentioned the name of his hotel. "Your number?" "Room 24. "Thank you," said McCartney. "I will call on you at 10. Whitney smiled. He could enjoy a good joke, even from a crook. "Good night," he said. At 10 o'clock that night, Whitley was sitting at the desk in his hotel room, writing up a report. There was a gentle knock on the door. "Come in," said the chief. The door opened. A voice sang out, "Good evening, Colonel." Whitley turned to his guest. "McCartney!" he shouted, drawing his revolver, which is a gun. "How are you here?" "Put up your shooting iron, Colonel," McCartney said. "I merely called to pay my respects. I am going back, of course." And McCartney really did walk back to prison, smiling all the way. Herman Whitley never did figure out how McCartney got out of jail that night. However he did it, the stunt illustrated a serious challenge facing the U.S. government in the 1870s. The Secret Service was absolutely determined to catch counterfeiters and keep them behind bars. But Coney men were just as eager to get free, and they were good at it too. All right, and we will read Chapter 1. The Operative. On a freezing morning in February 1875, Patrick Tyrell hopped off a streetcar in downtown Chicago, Illinois. A massive fire had gutted the city just 4 years before, but Chicago was already roaring back to life. Stone buildings were rising all around, and the wide sidewalks were jammed with people in a hurry. Tyrell stalked through the doors of the newly rebuilt Palmer House Hotel and stood in the cavernous lobby. With its shining marble, glittering chandeliers, and columns reaching up to soaring ceilings, the place looked more like an overgrown palace than a hotel. But Tyrell wasn't here to admire the architecture. He asked a clerk for the room number of his boss, the new Secret Service chief, Elmer Washburn. And here's a picture of Patrick Tyrell. A powerfully built man with thick black hair. Tyrell had spent his adult life chasing down crooks as a Chicago detective. Now 44, he was one of the newest operatives of the United States Secret Service. He knew all about Coney men like Pete McCartney. It was his job to put them out of business. The operative found Washburn's room, and the two men sat down to talk. The subject was the usual one, counterfeiters and how to nab them, or catch them, or stop them. Specifically, Washburn had taken the train from Washington to talk to Tyrell about a particularly dangerous Coney man, an expert engraver. And engraving is when they scratch lettering or words into something. An expert engraver and brother-in-law to Pete McCartney. The man was an even bigger thorn in the government side than McCartney. In fact, he was a threat to the nation's entire economic system. His name was Benjamin Boyd. Born in Cincinnati in 1834, Boyd was the son of a master engraver. Engravers cut designs and pictures into metal plates, and the plates were then used to make prints on paper. Young Ben showed interest in his father's craft, an obvious artistic talent. When Ben was still a teenager, his father set him up to study with one of the city's best engravers. The plan was that one day, Ben would take over the family business. And here's a picture of a street in Chicago during this time period, so the late 1800s. That would be what the street looked like. Other Cincinnati engravers noticed Boyd's skill, and one of them, Nat Kinsley, offered to teach the kid a few advanced techniques. Kinsley was known for his beautifully intricate engravings of landscapes. It was less well known that with that same steady hand and attention to detail, he also cut plates to print counterfeit money. Ben was tempted by the idea of making money, literally making it. And he learned quickly from Kinsley. At the age of 20, hunched over the desk in his room at his father's house, he cut his first 2 counterfeit plates, the front and back of a $20 bill. The quality of this 20 was Boyd's ticket into the secret world of counterfeiting. He hopped around the Midwest cutting plates and printing coney. Distributors bought the goods from him, usually for at least 15% of the fake money's value. Distributors then doubled the price and sold the bills to shovers, whose job it was to pass the counterfeit cash in stores and banks. The potential profits were enormous. From just one set of $50 plates, Boyd printed 265,000, about $6 million in today's money. But it was a risky way to get rich. Boyd was arrested in Iowa in 1859 and sentenced to 2 years in the state penitentiary. After his release, Boyd moved to Illinois and went right back to cutting counterfeit plates. He partnered with Pete McCartney and they set up a workshop in Mattoon. At some point in the early 1860s, Boyd met a young woman named Almiranda Ackman, a pretty brunette according to a later Secret Service report. Allie's father was yet another talented engraver gone wrong. Allie and her sister Martha had grown up helping their dad print and pass coney in Indianapolis. Pete McCartney married Martha and Ben fell for Allie. Ben and Allie started working together. He made the bills. She carried them to distributors in her straw shopping basket. Secret Service agents tracked the fake money to Mattoon and busted Boyd in his workshop. At the same time, another team of agents burst into a nearby hotel and grabbed Allie Ackman. When detectives searched Allie's basket, they found $30,000 in phony 50s, 20s, and 10s. It was a tight spot, but Ben managed to get both himself and his girl off the hook by agreeing to hand over a set of plates for printing $50 bills. The beautifully cut plates had taken about a year of painstaking labor to make. Free again, Ben and Allie were married in Michigan. From 1865 to 1875, the Boyds kept out of sight. Boyd wasn't a show-off like his brother-in-law, Pete. He preferred to lay low and work. And he was so good, so valuable to his business partners, they spared no expense to protect and hide him. But the Secret Service knew Boyd was still out there somewhere, and they knew he was still working because his nearly perfect counterfeit money kept showing up all over the Midwest. Boyd's masterpiece was a $5 bill that even some experts couldn't tell was fake. As one official report put it, he is considered the best letterer on steel in the country, or the world. After reviewing the case, Secret Service Chief Washburn gave Patrick Tyrell his new assignment. He was to track down Ben Boyd and get him dead to rights, grab him with incriminating evidence on him. The capture of Boyd, Washburn said, would snap the backbone of counterfeiting in the United States. A veteran of the Chicago Police Department, Tyrell, knew how things worked in the real world. He needed information about Boyd, and he went to the only people who had it, criminals. Tyrell contacted Ben's old teacher, Nat Kinsley. Kinsley was down on his luck and ready to sell out an old pal for the right price. "I'm in need of money in the worst way," Kinsley wrote to Tyrell in one of the many letters they exchanged. For the next 8 months, Tyrell saw very little of his wife and children in Chicago. Following tips from Kinsley and other paid informers, the operative followed Boyd's winding trail through Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, and Illinois. He discovered that Boyd had lived briefly in Decatur, Illinois, as Charles Mitchell, and as B.F. Wilson in Des Moines, Iowa. In September, Tyrell learned the so-called B.F. Wilson and his wife had left Iowa for Fulton, Illinois, where they rented a white house near the banks of the Mississippi River. Tyrell headed for Fulton. He found the windows of the Wilsons' house covered by thick green curtains, always drawn. Neighbors said Miss Wilson was sometimes seen going to the market, but Mr. Wilson never showed his face. Another man, though, was often seen coming and going. This other man was Nat Kinsley. He was helping Boyd cut plates and secretly sending Tyrell updates from inside his old student's house. Tyrell needed to move quickly, but not too quickly. He had Boyd cornered now and wanted to give his prey time to settle in, to feel safe. He wanted Boyd to start working on a new set of counterfeit plates. He wanted to catch Boyd in the act. On October 18th, Tyrell rented a hotel room in Lyons, Iowa, across the river from Fulton. He spent a couple days watching Boyd Street, studying the layout of the surrounding blocks. 2 days later, Kinsley took the ferry over to Lyons and found Tyrell in his room. "Good news," Kinsley said. Boyd had started work on a new set of $20 plates. Tyrell and Kinsley set their plan. The next morning, Kinsley would be at the house. As Tyrell approached, Kinsley would signal from the window, letting the operative know whether or not Boyd was at work on his plates. If he was, the raid would proceed. If not, they'd wait. Tyrell handed Kinsley a 20 and told him that if all went well, they would not speak again. In his daily report to Chief Washburn, he wrote, I then arranged to make the pull at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. And here is a picture of a page from Tyrell's daily report to Chief Washburn. Now remember, they had to write everything. They didn't have Facebook or text messaging where they could just, send things back and forth immediately. So this was a process. So every day he would write a letter and send it to his boss. And here's what that looked like. Okay, so we will start with chapter 2 tomorrow, and I want you to think about what you would do if you were the police chief or a member of the Secret Service during this time, and it was your job to stop Boyd from making these plates so that he could produce fake money. And I wonder if Miss Boyd that teaches at our school is related to Benjamin Boyd. It's a good question. We might have to ask her. See you guys tomorrow. Bye.